The chamber of the Galactic Council was older than most stars. Its walls curved like the inside of a living planet, layered with glowing symbols from 100 civilizations. Every seat was filled. Tall beings of crystal light. Massive armored forms that breathed steam. Thin shadows that never fully showed their shape. They had gathered for only one reason: Earth. The name was spoken without respect. To the Council, Earth was a young world with a loud species. Humans spread fast, argued often, and fought each other with passion. They were clever, but uncontrolled. Worse, they had begun to explore beyond their system without permission. That made them dangerous. A towering avian delegate spoke first, its many eyes blinking in slow rhythm. It listed human wars, shown as red flashes across holographic space. Another delegate followed, showing images of cities burning, weapons tested, and fleets under construction. Each image was chosen carefully. Each one told the same story. Humans could not be trusted. No human voice answered. There was no human seat in the chamber. Earth had never been invited to speak before the Council. Ancient law allowed this. Civilizations below a certain level could be judged without notice. It had happened many times before. Debate was short. Some delegates argued for delay. Humans were young, they said. Time might calm them. Others demanded immediate action. They warned that waiting would only make humans stronger. The word containment was used. Then it was replaced with erasure. The chamber grew quiet. The final speaker rose. A being of pure energy, ancient and respected. When it spoke, the chamber listened. Earth had crossed too many lines. Human fleets were advancing. Their technology was adapting too fast. Their signals were too strong, too curious, too fearless. The verdict was called. The vote appeared above the chamber. One by one, symbols lit up. Red, red, red. The decision was nearly unanimous. Earth was marked for destruction. A cold confirmation tone echoed through the chamber. Far across the galaxy, dormant extermination fleets woke. Engines powered on. Weapons aligned toward a small blue planet that had no idea it had just been sentenced to death. The Council began to rise from their seats. The matter was finished. Then the chamber screamed. Every surface flashed white. Alarms that had not sounded in a million years filled the air. The central hologram shattered and rebuilt itself without permission. Symbols twisted into unknown patterns. Council security systems tried to shut it down. They failed. A single signal forced its way into the chamber. It was not loud. It was not aggressive. It was human. A simple image appeared. A dark background. A single figure standing still. Human, older, with tired eyes and calm posture. No weapons. No symbols of power. Just a person looking directly into the heart of the galaxy. The Council froze. This was impossible. The chamber was shielded beyond physics. No lesser species could reach it, yet the signal was clean, perfect, unstoppable. The human began to speak. The voice was steady, not angry, not afraid. They said the Council's vote had been heard. They said Earth understood the decision. They said humans were not surprised. The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates shouted. Security demanded the feed be cut. It could not be done. The signal ignored every command. The human continued. They said humans had known about the Council for a very long time. Long before their first warp jump. Long before their first colony. Humans had seen the Watchers. The probes. The quiet shadows beyond their system. They had stayed silent on purpose. Images replaced the human's face. Old star charts appeared. Council borders. Fleet routes. Even secret worlds thought lost to history. The accuracy was perfect. Murmurs turned to fear. Human returned to view. They said silence was not weakness, but it was patience. Humans watched. Humans learned. Humans planned. They spoke of Earth's history, surviving ice ages, plagues, and wars, of rebuilding again and again, of learning fastest when under threat, of turning fear into focus. The humans said something that made the chamber go still. They said humans did not fear extinction. They had stared it in the face many times before. What humans feared was surrender. The energy delegate demanded to know how the human signal had reached the chamber. The human answered simply. Humans listened better than the galaxy believed. Humans built systems not just to travel, but to understand. And once something was understood, it could be reached. A new alarm sounded. This one did not come from the chamber. Fleet reports began to arrive. Extermination ships were failing to exit hyperspace. Navigation was breaking down. Some fleets were drifting, frozen between stars. Others had lost power completely. Panic spread. The human raised one hand, not in threat, but in pause. They said this was not an attack. Humans had not fired a single weapon. They'd only prepared for the day someone decided Earth should die. That day was today. The human looked tired now, but resolute. They said humans did not want war. But they would not kneel, they would not beg. And they would not vanish quietly to make the galaxy feel safe. They said Earth was not alone, not anymore. The transmission began to fade. Before it ended, the human left the council with one final statement. They said the galaxy had made a mistake. It's not in judging humanity as dangerous, but in deciding to test what humans would do when pushed too far. The signal cut. Silence filled the chamber once more. But it was no longer cold. It was afraid. The Galactic Council did not speak for a long time after the human signal ended. The chamber that once felt eternal now felt fragile. Delegates who had ruled stars for ages sat frozen, their thoughts racing faster than light. Earth was supposed to be small, predictable. Instead, it had reached into the heart of galactic power and spoken without fear. Then the reports became worse. More fleet data arrived, each update more alarming than the last. Entire extermination groups were lost in deep transit, unable to return or advance. Some ships reported that space itself no longer behaved as expected around them. Navigation markers drifted. Time measurements disagreed. Engines refused commands as if reality had quietly turned its back on them. Panic spread through the chamber. An insectoid delegate demanded immediate retaliation. Another called for sealing all borders. A third accused the human transmission of being a trick, an illusion meant to delay action. None of it changed the facts flooding their systems. The fleets were trapped. The chamber lights dimmed as power was diverted to defensive systems. Ancient safeguards activated, forming layers of energy around the council. These systems had never failed. They had protected the galaxy's rulers since before most species learned to speak. They failed in silence. The human signal returned. There was no warning this time, no alarm. It simply appeared, clear and calm, as if it had always been there. The same human stood before them, hands visible, expression unchanged. The council shouted as one. Orders were given. Systems attacked the signal from every angle. Nothing worked. The humans spoke again. They said they noticed the fear. They said fear was understandable. Humans felt it too, often. The difference was what humans did next. The image shifted. New visuals appeared. Human cities, not the burning ruins shown earlier by the council, but thriving worlds. Towers beside oceans. Vast underground habitats. Orbital structures built with patience, not haste. The human explained that Earth had prepared for extinction long before meeting the galaxy. Humans had learned that survival did not belong to the strongest or the fastest, but to the most adaptable. Every disaster in their history had taught them the same lesson. Never rely on a single path. They spoke of human science, not as magic, but as stubborn curiosity. Humans asked why until answers broke. They tested limits until limits moved. When they discovered the nature of faster-than-light travel, they also discovered its weakness. The council listened, despite itself. The human explained that hyperspace was not empty. It was balanced, delicate. The galaxy had built its empires on a system it barely understood. Trusting ancient designs without question, humans questioned everything. They had not built faster ships. They had built better understanding. They had learned how to bend transitions, slow them, redirect them, not destroy fleets. Just stop them from arriving. The humans said again that this was not war. It was defense, designed to avoid bloodshed. A line drawn without crossing it. A crystalline delegate demanded proof. The human nodded. Live feeds filled the chamber. Extermination fleets appeared, drifting helplessly. Crews alive but powerless, weapons silent. No explosions, no dead. just ships caught in invisible nets of altered physics. The chamber shook with fear. The human continued. They said humanity never wanted to rule the galaxy. Humans struggled enough ruling themselves. All they wanted was to be left alone to exist, argue, build, and dream in peace. But humans would not accept extinction decided in a room they were not allowed to enter. A shadow delegate asked the question no one else dared to voice. Why now? The human answered honestly. Because the vote was final.
Ow.
Because the fleets launched. Because when humans were pushed into a corner, they stopped hoping and started acting. The council tried to negotiate. Promises were offered. The erasure order could be delayed. Reviewed, forgotten. The human listened, then shook their head slowly. Humans had learned another lesson from history. Promises made under fear did not last. The humans said something that chilled the chamber. They said the signal was not just a message, it was a test. The galaxy was being measured, the same way the Council had measured Earth. How it responded would decide what came next. A new wave of reports arrived, more systems affected, trade routes unstable. Military movement slowed across the galaxy. It was clear now, this was not limited to the extermination fleets. Human influence was everywhere. The human admitted it openly. Earth had spent generations quietly building systems inside the gaps of galactic infrastructure. Listening posts, mathematical anchors, no weapons, just control over movement. The galaxy had given humans time. Humans had used it well. The human's voice softened. They said this did not have to end in collapse. Humans would restore full stability once Earth's safety was guaranteed, not with words, with law, with recognition, with respect. The Council argued again, louder than before. Some demanded surrender. Others demanded a final strike, even if it meant tearing the galaxy apart. Ancient pride battled rising terror. The human watched without interrupting. When the noise peaked, the human spoke one last time in this transmission. They said the Council would vote again, not because humans demanded it, but because the galaxy could not move forward otherwise. The next decision would be watched. Every signal, every fleet order, every hidden plan. Humans were listening now. The human warned them not to confuse mercy with weakness. Humans chose restraint because they valued life, even alien life. But restraint was a choice, not a limit. The image began to fade. Before it vanished, the human left the Council with a quiet truth. They said the galaxy had spent millennia believing it stood above consequence. Today, it had met a species that learned consequence early. The signal ended. The chamber was silent again. But now the silence carried weight. The Galactic Council understood something at last. Earth was no longer on trial. The galaxy was. The Galactic Council had ruled through fear for so long that it did not know how to exist without it. Now, fear had turned inward. Delegates whispered in private channels, hiding plans from one another, suspecting betrayal in every silence. The chamber felt smaller, as if the walls themselves were listening. Then the reports changed tone. It was no longer only extermination fleets that were trapped. Patrol groups vanished from tracking. Trade convoys failed to arrive. Relay stations reported delays that made no sense. The galaxy's vast network of movement was slowing, not breaking, but tightening like a net. The Council realized the truth too late. This was not a reaction to the vote. It was preparation for it. A senior tactician species reviewed the data in disbelief. The patterns were clear now. Humans had not attacked ships. They had reshaped the rules of travel itself, only slightly, but enough to matter, enough to give Earth control over when and where force could be applied. The galaxy's greatest weapon had always been speed. Humans had taken it away. An emergency command was issued to override all automated systems and force a direct strike on Earth using older drives. The order never reached the fleets. Signals looped back to their source, rewritten and delayed. The galaxy was shouting at itself. Anger replaced fear. Several council members demanded the immediate annihilation of Earth by any means left. Planet killers were mentioned. Dimensional weapons long forbidden were considered. The chamber filled with rage from beings who had never been powerless. As if summoned by the emotion, the human signal appeared again. This time the human was not alone. Behind them, stood other humans, dozens of them, from different worlds and stations, engineers, soldiers, scientists, leaders, ordinary people. They did not look triumphant.
Ow.
They looked focused. The human speaker said they had hoped the council would choose wisdom. They said escalation had been expected, but disappointment still hurt. The council accused humanity of holding the galaxy hostage. The human did not deny it. They said the galaxy had held Earth hostage first, without ever asking permission. The image shifted again. A projection of hyperspace appeared, layered with glowing threads and anchors. The human explained simply that humans had learned how to place weights inside transit corridors. Not walls, not weapons, just resistance. Enough resistance that any mass moving with hostile intent slowed down. Peaceful traffic still flowed. Military force did not. The brilliance of it struck the chamber like a physical blow. Humans had built morality into physics. The humans said Earth had no interest in conquest. Humans were too divided for empire, too curious for stagnation, too stubborn to kneel. They wanted a border that could not be crossed without consequence. A council elder asked the question that mattered most. What happens now? The human answered with something unexpected. He said now humans would wait. The council was confused. Waiting gave the galaxy time to adapt, to find weaknesses, to strike back. The human smiled faintly. They said humans understood time very well. They had evolved under pressure, racing clocks, short lives. Waiting was not weakness when one had prepared for centuries. While the galaxy argued, Earth would continue to learn, to refine, to grow. And if the council chose war, humanity would not win by destroying the galaxy. They would win by making war impossible. The words sank deep. A sudden interruption cut across the chamber. One of the most aggressive council species had acted alone. A hidden fleet had attempted a blind jump toward Earth, ignoring the altered transit laws. The result arrived seconds later. The fleet did not explode, did not disappear. It emerged, scattered across light years. Ships intact but separated, stranded, powerless to regroup. Alive but defeated before the first shot. The human watched the reports in silence. Then they spoke again. They said this was the last demonstration. Humans did not enjoy humiliating others. They said the council would vote again. This time, the vote would not be about Earth's destruction. It would be about recognition. A place at the table, a voice in decisions that affected their existence. Clear boundaries, enforced not by threat but by reality itself. Some council members resisted. Pride screamed louder than reason, but more and more delegates understood the truth. There was no winning this. The galaxy's strength had always been external. Fleets, numbers, control. Human strength was internal. Adaptation, planning, refusal to accept extinction as inevitable. Human made one final escalation clear. They said the system controlling transit resistance was not centralized. It could not be destroyed with a single strike. It existed everywhere humans existed. On Earth, on colonies, on stations hidden in places the galaxy never looked. Even if Earth burned, humanity would not end. That was the moment fear fully matured into respect. Council began the emergency vote. Symbols flickered above the chamber once more. This time the colors were not all red. The human did not celebrate. They simply waited, hands folded, eyes steady. The galaxy had tried to erase Earth. Now it had to decide whether it could live with the consequences of failing. The emergency vote unfolded in silence, heavier than any weapon. Symbols hovered above the Galactic Council chamber, flickering as ancient systems processed a decision that would reshape the galaxy. For the first time in recorded history, the Council was not choosing the fate of another world. It was choosing its own future. Delegates who once ruled without question now hesitated, understanding that every symbol they cast would be remembered forever. The human transmission remained active, but the speakers said nothing. They watched. The stillness was deliberate. Humans had learned that silence, when used with intent, could be louder than threat. The council felt that weight pressing down on them, forcing honesty where arrogance once lived. Votes changed slowly at first. A red symbol shifted to neutral, then another. Some species resisted, clinging to pride older than their stars. Others adapted quickly, recognizing a simple truth. The galaxy could no longer function the way it always had. The rules had changed, not by conquest, but by exposure. When the final count stabilized, the chamber released a long collective breath. The extermination order against Earth was revoked. The decision echoed through every connected system. Fleets received new instructions, weapons powered down. Transit corridors began to loosen, resistance easing as human systems responded instantly as promised. Trade routes stabilized. Time itself seemed to flow more smoothly, as if the galaxy had been holding its breath alongside the Council. Only then did the humans speak. They acknowledged the vote without celebration. There was no triumph in their voice, only resolve. They said the cancellation of Earth's destruction was not a gift, it was a correction. A mistake undone before it became a crime that could never be erased. The Council asked what humanity wanted in return. The human did not answer immediately. Instead, they spoke of Earth, of oceans and storms, of cities that never slept, of billions of voices arguing, dreaming, building, and failing forward together. They spoke of how humans fought each other fiercely yet stood united when extinction appeared at their door. Then they stated Earth's terms. Humanity would be recognized as a sovereign civilization, not a developing threat. Earth would have a permanent seat on the Galactic Council, with full access to deliberations that affected shared space. No human world would be observed, judged, or acted upon without direct communication. No fleets would enter human-defined borders without consent. These were not demands shouted in anger. They were boundaries spoken with clarity. The Council reacted with discomfort. Some delegates protested. A seat on the Council had always been reserved for ancient powers. Granting it to humans would change the balance forever. The human replied calmly that the balance had already changed. This simply acknowledged reality. They added one final condition. Humanity would restore full transit freedom across the galaxy, but the defensive systems would remain. Not active, not aggressive, but ready. A reminder built into the structure of space itself. Cost of attempting genocide would no longer be paid by the victim alone. The Council understood the message. Strength was no longer measured only in fleets. After long debate, the Council agreed. The symbols locked into place. The decision became law. Earth was no longer a target, it was a participant. Across the galaxy, reactions exploded. Some worlds celebrated the return of stable trade. Others whispered in fear about a species that had rewritten physics without firing a shot. Militaries revised doctrines overnight. Philosophers argued about power, restraint, and the meaning of security in a universe that had just been humbled. On Earth, the news arrived quietly. There were no mass celebrations, no victory parades. Humanity had learned not to cheer too early. Leaders spoke carefully. Systems stayed alert. Engineers monitored the anchors that kept the galaxy honest. Soldiers stood watch, not in triumph, but in duty. The human who had spoken to the Council addressed their own people last. They said the galaxy was not the enemy. Fear was. Arrogance was. Silence without preparation was. Humanity had survived because it refused to be erased, not because it wanted to dominate. They reminded Earth that power demanded discipline. That restraint was a choice that had to be made every day. That the moment humans became what the Council once was, they would deserve the same resistance. The transmission ended. In the Galactic Council chamber, delegates remained seated long after. The room felt different now. Smaller perhaps, but more honest. They had met a species that did not ask for permission to exist and did not apologize for surviving. They had judged humanity as dangerous. They had been right. But they had been wrong about what that meant. Earth returned to silence, but it was no longer invisible. Every signal sent across the stars now carried an unspoken understanding. Somewhere humans were listening, not as conquerors, not as gods, but as a species that had looked extinction in the eye and refused to blink. The galaxy would never forget the day it tried to erase Earth, and learned instead how close it came to erasing itself.